Chapter 12. Might I have a bit of earth? Mary ran so fast that she was rather out of breath when she reached her room. Her hair was ruffled and her forehead and cheeks were bright pink. Her dinner was waiting on the table and Martha was waiting near it. "Thou's a bit late," she said. "Where's thou been?" I've seen Deacon," Mary said. "I knew he'd come," said Martha. "How does thou like him?" I think he's beautiful," said Mary in a determined voice. Martha looked rather taken aback, and she looked pleased too. "Well," she said, "he's the best lad that was ever born, but us never thought he was handsome. His nose turns up too much." "I like it to turn up," said Mary. "And his eyes is so round," said Martha, a trifle doubtful. "They're a nice color, though." "I like them round," said Mary, "and they're exactly the color of the sky over the moor." Martha beamed with satisfaction. "Mother says he made 'em that color with always looking up at the birds and the clouds. But he has got a big mouth, hasn't he now?" "I love his big mouth," said Mary obstinately. "I wish mine were just like it." Martha chuckled delightedly. "It'd look rare funny on that tiny bit of face," she said. "But I knowed it would be that way when thou saw him. How does thou like the seeds and the garden tools?" "How did you know he brought 'em?" said Mary. "Well, I never thought of him not bringing 'em. He'd be sure to bring 'em if they were in Yorkshire. He's such a trusty lad." Mary was afraid she might begin to ask difficult questions, but she did not. She was very much interested in the seeds and gardening tools, and there was only one moment when Mary was frightened. This was when she began to ask where the flowers were to be planted. "Who did thou ask about it?" she inquired. "I haven't asked anyone yet," said Mary, hesitating. "Well, I wouldn't ask the head gardener. He's too grand, Mr. Roach is." "Well, I've never seen him," said Mary. "I've only seen undergardeners and Ben Weatherstaff." "If I was you, I'd ask Ben Weatherstaff," advised Martha. "He's not half as bad as he looked, for all he's so crabby. Mr. Craven lets him do what he likes because he was here when Mrs. Craven was alive, and he used to make her laugh, and she liked him. Perhaps he'd find you a corner somewhere out of the way." "Well, if it was out of the way, and no one wanted it, no one could really mind me having it, could they?" Mary asked anxiously. "Well, there wouldn't be no reason," answered Martha. "You couldn't do any harm." Mary ate her dinner as quickly as she could. When she rose from the table, she was going to go run to her room and put on her hat again, but Martha stopped her. "I've got something to tell you," she said. "I thought I'd let you eat your dinner first. Mr. Craven came back this morning, and I think he wants to see you." Mary turned quite pale. "Oh?" she said. "Why? Why? He didn't want to see me when I came. I heard Pitcher say that he didn't." "Well," explained Martha, "Miss Medlock says it's because of Mother. She was walking to Thwaite Village as she met him. She'd never spoke to him before, but Mrs. Craven had been to our cottage 2 or 3 times. He'd forgot, but Mother hadn't, and she made bold to stop him. I don't know what it is she said to him about you, but she said something as put him in the mind to see you before he goes away again tomorrow." "Oh," cried Mary, "is he going away tomorrow? I am so glad." "He's going away for a long time. He mayn't come back until autumn or winter. He's going to travel in foreign places. He's always doing it." "Oh, I'm so glad. I am so glad," said Mary thankfully. If he did not come back until winter or even autumn, there would be time to watch the secret garden come alive. Even if he found out and then took it away from her, she would have at least had that much. "When do you think he will want to see me?" She did not finish the sentence because The door opened and Miss Medlock walked in. She had on her best black dress and cap, and her collar was fastened with a large brooch with a picture of a man's face on it. It was a color photograph of Mr. Medlock, who had died years ago, and she always wore it when she was dressed up. She looked nervous and excited. "Your hair's rough," she said quickly. "Go and brush it. Martha, help her to slip on her best dress. Mr. Craven sent me to bring her to him in his study." All the pink left Mary's cheeks. Her heart began to thump, and she felt herself changing into the stiff, plain, silent child again. She did not even answer Miss Medlock, but she turned and walked into her bedroom, followed by Martha. She said nothing while her dress was changed and her hair was brushed, and after she was quite tidy, she followed Miss Medlock down the corridors in silence. What was there for her to say? She was obliged to go and see Mr. Craven, and he would not like her, and she would not like him. She knew what he would think of her. She was taken to a part of the house she had not been into before. At last Miss Medlock knocked at a door, and when someone said, "Come in," they entered the room together. A man was sitting in an armchair before the fire, and Miss Medlock spoke to him. "This is Miss Mary, sir," she said. "You can go and leave her here. I will ring for you when I want you to take her away," Mr. Craven said. When she went out, closed the door, Mary could only stand, waiting, a plain little thing, twisting her thin hands together. She could see that the man in the chair was not so much a hunchback as a man with a high, rather crooked shoulders. He had black hair streaked with white. He turned his head over his high shoulders and he spoke to her. "Come here," he said. Mary went to him. He was not ugly. His face would have been handsome if it had not been so miserable. He looked as if the sight of her worried and fretted him, as if he did not know what in the world to do with her. "Are you well?" he asked. "Yes," said Mary. "Do they take good care of you?" "Yes." He rubbed his forehead fretfully, and he looked her over. "You're very thin," he said. "I am getting fatter," Mary answered in what she knew was her stiffest way. What an unhappy face he had. His black eyes seemed as if they scarcely saw her, as if they were seeing something else, and he could hardly keep his thoughts upon her. "I forgot you," he said. "How could I remember you? I intended to send you a governess or a nurse or someone of that sort, but I forgot you."